After giving birth, I woke up to my husband's family holding my baby. "You're too weak, we'll be raising him ourselves," they declared. My husband nodded and said, "It's for the best." Shaking, I reached for my phone and played the recording that made the nurses step in immediately. This happened last year in Austin, Texas. I'm still trying to process it even now. Part of me can't believe it really happened. I, a 33-year-old female, had just given birth to my first child. It was not easy. I went through over 18 hours of labor before the doctors decided to do an emergency C-section. I lost a lot of blood and was completely out of it. I remember waking up feeling weak, sore, and confused. I could barely lift my head. I thought I'd see my baby in a little bassinet next to me or maybe in the arms of a nurse, something normal. But no, when I opened my eyes, my baby wasn't with the nurses. He wasn't with me. He was in the arms of Greg's mom. Greg's entire family was in the room. His mom, his dad, his sister, and Greg. My husband, or whatever you want to call him now, was standing against the wall with his arms crossed like nothing was wrong. The first words out of Barbara's mouth, that's Greg's mom, were, "You're too weak, we're taking him now. Don't worry, we've got it handled." And then she looked down at my newborn like he was hers. I thought maybe I was dreaming. I blinked a few times and looked around the room, but no, I was awake. This was real. Greg's sister Molly was snapping pictures and his dad Frank was just standing there like some kind of security guard, like they were protecting him from me. I looked at Greg. All he said was, "It's for the best." Just like that, calm, like we had talked about this before, like this was some normal plan we had all agreed on. We hadn't. Here's what you need to know. For months, Barbara kept making these weird comments about my baby. Little things at first, stuff like, "When the baby comes, we'll make sure everything is taken care of so you don't have to stress, or you can rest and we'll handle the hard stuff. You'll thank us later." At first, I thought she was just trying to help. But over time it started to feel like something else, like she was getting ready to take over, like she thought he was going to be her baby. Greg never defended me, not once. He'd just laugh and say, "Mom's just excited. Don't make a big deal out of it." But it felt off, so I started keeping my phone nearby. Anytime we were around his family, I'd hit record just in case. We were having dinner at their house when Barbara got real bold that night. Out of nowhere, she said, "Once the baby's born, you won't have to lift a finger. We'll take care of him. Honestly, it's probably better if we just raise him for you." Greg didn't even blink. He added, "Yeah, you get overwhelmed easy. Mom's done this before. It just makes sense." I hit record on my phone under the table. I got the whole thing, every word. I never thought I'd need it, but something in me said, "Save this." So there I am lying in bed, fresh out of surgery. Surgery too weak to sit up straight. My baby is in Barbara's arms. I could feel myself getting shaky, not from the surgery but from rage. I asked them to give me my baby. Barbara laughed and said, "Sweetheart, you just focus on getting better. We've got him." Dee nodded again. "It's better this way. You're not strong enough right now. We're his family. We'll handle it." It was like they thought I wasn't even there, like I didn't exist anymore, like I had just been the container to bring this baby into the world and now my part was over. They were standing there so sure of themselves, like they had planned this out, and honestly I think they had. I couldn't argue. I could barely breathe without hurting. But I could grab my phone. I picked it up off the little hospital table, found the recording from dinner, turned up the volume and hit play. Barbara's own voice filled the room clear as day. "We'll take care of him. Honestly, it's probably better if we just raise him for you." Then Greg's voice. "You get overwhelmed easy. Mom's done this before. It just makes sense." It was loud. Barbara froze, Molly stopped mid-photo. Frank looked like someone had punched him. And right then, like some movie scene, a nurse walked into the room. She heard the recording, saw Barbara holding the baby, looked at me, saw how pale I was, how shaky I was. She didn't say a word. She left and came back with security. Barbara tried to act confused, like none of this was happening. "We were just helping. She's not well. We're family." But nobody cared. Security took them all out, Greg included. They weren't allowed back in. A red flag was put on my file. I had 2 guards posted at the door from that point on. I finally got to hold my baby, and that night I really slept. Greg texted me from the parking lot. "You made a scene. You embarrassed everyone." I didn't answer. I just held my baby tighter. By the next morning, The hospital was locked down tighter than I thought possible. A nurse told me quietly, "There's been attempts." I asked what she meant. Apparently, Barbara had tried to come back twice. First, she showed up with flowers, pretending she was just a sweet grandma visiting her daughter-in-law. Security turned her away. Then later that night, someone tried to slip past the nurse's station. They found Molly down the hallway trying to get a quick peek at my baby's room. They banned the entire family from the hospital after that. Names on a list, full stop. But Greg was worse. The next afternoon he texted me, "You're overreacting. They just love him. You're making this ugly." I ignored him. Then I heard from his lawyer. Yes, on day 2 of my son's life, Greg had already called a lawyer to ask about establishing joint custody while I was still in the hospital bed. He didn't even wait a week. About 3 days later, someone sent me screenshots. Apparently, Barbara had posted on Facebook. She uploaded a picture of her holding my baby from the day I gave birth, the caption, "So blessed to welcome. We are welcoming our little angel to the family. We can't wait to raise him right. God chose us for this." She didn't tag me. She didn't mention me reading it. You'd think she was the one who just gave birth. That post got shared around town fast. People from the church started messaging me, asking what's going on, why isn't she saying you're okay, and why is she talking like he's her baby. Barbara deleted the post by that evening, but it was too late. Screenshots were everywhere. Then someone from the church board called me. Apparently, Barbara had been telling people I was struggling, that I had given the baby over willingly because I wasn't mentally ready to be a mom. They were setting up a story behind my back, laying the groundwork. I realized this wasn't just them helping. They were trying to replace me. A hospital social worker came into my room that day. She sat down gently and said, "We've had concerns raised. Greg's family has been saying you're not well enough to care for your child, that you're confused, forgetful, and that you've been asking to give the baby to them temporarily." I almost laughed. I said, "Check the security reports. Ask the nurses who've been with me all week. And I have recordings of them saying this was their plan before I even gave birth." The social worker looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "Good, keep those recordings, we'll make copies." They flagged my medical file not because of me but because of them. Greg's family was officially labeled a threat. 3 days later, I got served papers in the hospital. Greg had filed an emergency motion to take the baby for my own health and recovery, claiming I was in too much pain and stress to care for him. His lawyer filed it fast, too fast. I found out later they'd been planning this before I even gave birth. The kicker? Greg listed his mom's house as the place the baby would stay for safety. So not only was he trying to take my baby, he was trying to hand him over to Barbara while I was still in the hospital recovering from surgery, holding the baby. Thankfully, the hospital's legal team stepped in. I gave them the recordings, the security reports, and the screenshots. By the time we had the emergency hearing 2 days later, the judge looked like he wanted to throw the papers at Greg's head. But it wasn't over, not even close. Because the very next night, my phone rang at 1 a.m. It was a nurse. She said someone had just called the front desk claiming to be me, trying to authorize Greg's mom to come pick up the baby. Security reviewed the call. It wasn't me. The voice was Barbara's. She tried to steal my baby over the phone after the 1 a.m. call where Barbara tried to authorize herself to take my baby. The hospital upgraded my security again. They moved me and my baby to a different floor under a different name in the system, private wing. New wristbands and passwords were required for any updates. The hospital staff wasn't playing around anymore. But Greg, he was getting sloppy. The next morning, a nurse slid me a note. Apparently, Greg had been in the lobby asking visitors if they were going up to see me, and trying to send messages through random people delivering flowers and food. Then someone tried to have food delivered under my name with a note attached. "We love you. Let us take care of our boy. Now you need to rest. We're coming soon, Mom and Dad." I didn't eat it. Nobody did. The nurse handed the food straight to security, and that's when I realized something. They weren't just trying to take my baby. They were trying to wear me down mentally and emotionally. Barbara was playing the long game. I finally got discharged 5 days later. Before I even got through the front door of my own house, there was a note taped to it in big, neat handwriting, Barbara's handwriting. "Welcome home. Let us know when we can come pick him up for the weekend." The weekend? Like he was some borrowed library book. I crumpled it up and tossed it without thinking, but not before snapping a picture just in case. My lawyer called me 2 days later. She sounded almost nervous. Apparently, Greg's legal team had filed something new. Barbara was trying to claim grandparents' rights. She was arguing that she had been my baby's primary caregiver since birth, and that taking him away from her was harmful to his development, which was insane. She had been around him for all of 10 minutes before security kicked her out of the hospital. But here's the twist that nearly sent me over the edge. Barbara had already filed for temporary custody in another county. Somewhere rural, small court, few people. A place where she thought nobody would question her story. We only found out because a court clerk recognized my name and called my lawyer to double-check the paperwork. If they hadn't, I would have been blindsided. 1 week later, 2 CPS workers showed up at my door. Someone filed a report saying I was neglecting my baby, that I seemed mentally unstable, and that Greg's family was concerned for the child's safety. They used words like unfit and refusing help from experienced family. It was all lies. I showed the CPS workers the hospital reports, the security logs, the recording. One of them actually shook her head and said, "Honestly, this sounds like they're trying to create a case that doesn't exist." But the damage was clear. Barbara wasn't stopped. She was building a fake paper trail, trying to get me labeled as unstable so she could slide in and take my baby. Every move she made was calculated. The fake wellness check, the custody filings in another county, the harmless Facebook posts, the stories she spread at church. Greg was still. I was living with her and he was part of it all. One night around 11 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Normally I don't answer, but something told me to pick up. A woman's voice whispered, "You don't know me, but I work at the pharmacy your husband's family uses. They just tried to fill a prescription in your baby's name. Formula, diapers, even medicine for colic, all under your son's name but with Barbara's address. I thought you should know." I sat there in silence, the room spinning. They were preparing. It was like they already believed they were getting him. They were stocking up like this was already happening behind my back. I called my lawyer, I called the police, I sent them the voicemail from the pharmacy worker, and I started documenting every single thing. The fake CPS visit, the prescription attempt, the county court filing, Barbara's note on my door, Greg's text begging me to let mom help. I wasn't sleeping, I was barely eating. Every time the doorbell rang, I thought it was them. They weren't stopping, and honestly I started to feel like they wouldn't stop until they had him. After the fake CPS report, the attempted pharmacy pickup, and the custody filing in the other county, I realized they weren't going to back off on their own. They were getting bolder and I was getting tired. So I decided it was time to end this. I told my lawyer I wanted a restraining order against Barbara, Greg, and anyone else in that house. But before the hearing, Greg texted me out of nowhere. "Can we talk, just us, no lawyers?" I ignored it. Then he showed up at my front door alone. I didn't let him inside, but I stepped out and crossed my arms. He said, "Look, they're getting out of hand, but they're just excited. Mom's already planned a welcome home party. Maybe you should come, clear the air, make peace." Peace? After everything? But I thought about it and realized something. If they were going to keep lying about me, if they were going to tell the world I was unstable and unfit, maybe it was time to give them their audience. Barbara's welcome home party was at their house that weekend. And yes, I went, but I didn't come alone. I brought my lawyer. I brought the pharmacy voicemail saved to my phone. I brought screenshots of every fake CPS report, custody claim, and shady text. And just to make sure people heard the truth, I invited a few mutual friends, people from their church, people they had been feeding lies to for months. I wanted witnesses. When I walked in, Barbara acted like nothing had happened. "Sweetheart," she said, all smiles, arms wide open like we were best friends. "We've been dying to see the baby. Where is he?" I looked around the room, maybe 15 people. Family, neighbors, church people. All there to see their perfect little family. I took a deep breath and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "He's not here, and none of you will never see him again if you don't stop this madness." Dead silence. Barbara blinked, still pretending to play nice. "Not cause a scene," she said through clenched teeth. Greg stood awkwardly behind her, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. I turned on my phone and played the voicemail from the pharmacy worker on speaker. Barbara's face dropped. Then I held up the stack of CPS reports. All fake, all traced back to someone in this house. I said then the county filing paperwork filed under a fake address, also traced back here. Finally, I opened the text messages from Greg. Let mom help. She knows what she's doing. You're making this ugly. Barbara's smile was gone. People in the room started whispering. I saw two of her friends side-eyeing her hard. Finally, someone spoke, one of the church ladies. I thought you said she wasn't well, that she gave you the baby willingly. Barbara's face went red. Greg mumbled, Mom, maybe we should just tell the truth. And that's when Barbara snapped. She slammed her glass on the table and shouted, We were doing what was best for him. She's a mess. She can't handle this. If we didn't step in, that baby would have suffered. Everyone froze. Frank tried to calm her down. Molly looked like she wanted to disappear into the wall. Barbara kept ranting loud and red-faced, saying I was unfit, that they saved the baby, that I should be grateful. And right there in front of everyone, Greg finally broke. He looked at her and said, Mom, enough. Stop. We're done. The room fell quiet again. Barbara's mouth actually dropped open. Greg shook his head. This wasn't right, any of it. Barbara stormed out of her own living room, slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Frank went after her. Molly awkwardly started collecting empty plates and cups, like maybe if she stayed busy, nobody would look at her. A few people mumbled excuses and left. The church lady shook her head and said to me as she walked past, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. Greg just stood there alone now. I didn't think it would get this bad, he said quietly. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He didn't stop it. He let it happen. Later, as I drove home, I felt strange. Not happy, not really relieved, just empty. I thought confronting them would feel like victory, like I won something, but all I really felt was tired. Tired from fighting people who should have been standing next to me, not against me. Tired of proving I deserved to raise my own child. Tired of being treated like I didn't exist. At least the lies were out in the open now. Barbara's mask had slipped. Everyone saw it. And after that night, they finally left us alone. Greg filed to drop his custody case a week later. I never asked why. Maybe part of him realized what he'd allowed to happen, or maybe he just knew they had lost. Either way, it didn't matter. It was just me and my son now, and peace finally felt possible.